We are living in the middle of a massive historical paradox, and it is quietly completely destroying our romantic relationships from the inside out. Look around you. Pay close attention to the modern world. By almost every measurable, objective standard, women today have more freedom, more opportunities, more independence, more legal protection, and more financial resources than at any other point in human history. The doors that were firmly locked for our grandmothers and great-grandmothers have been blown wide open. They can be anything, do anything, and go anywhere. Yet, if you look at the psychological data, the sociological surveys, or if you simply sit down and truly observe the women in your life, you will notice something deeply unsettling and almost mathematically impossible. Happiness levels among women have been steadily, measurably declining for the past 40 years. This is the great unspoken crisis of our time. You see it in the skyrocketing rates of anxiety and depression. You see it in the sheer bone-deep exhaustion plastered on the faces of women trying to navigate modern life. You see it in the staggering amount of pharmaceutical interventions required just to get them through a normal Tuesday. And as a man, you undoubtedly feel it in your living room, in your bedroom, and in the constant, underlying, buzzing tension of your relationship. You try to fix it, you try to understand it, you try to logically solve the problems she presents to you, but you are constantly met with an immovable wall of generalized dissatisfaction. Today, we are going to unpack the absolute, unfiltered truth about why modern women seem so chronically unhappy. And I need you to listen incredibly carefully, because what I am about to share is not about blaming women, and it is certainly not about blaming you. It is about understanding the crushing, invisible architecture of the modern world that is quietly suffocating them. If you can understand the mechanics of this machine, you will finally stop taking her unhappiness as a personal attack on your value, your efforts, and your worth as a man. Let's start with the most brutal, invisible trap of modern existence, the paradox of choice. For thousands of years of human history, a woman's path was relatively laid out for her. It was heavily restricted, yes, and often deeply unfair by modern standards, but it was incredibly clear. She grew up, she got married, she managed a household, and she raised children within a tight-knit, localized community. The expectations were narrow, the choices were limited, and therefore the cognitive load was light. Today, the script has been completely flipped and set on fire. A woman is born into a world of absolutely infinite choices. She is told she can be a Fortune 500 CEO, a dedicated stay-at-home mother, a globe-trotting digital nomad, a brilliant artist, a ruthless politician, or somehow, magically, all of the above. Now, on paper, freedom is objectively a beautiful thing. But psychologically and neurologically, infinite choice is an absolute nightmare for the human brain. It creates a paralyzing phenomenon known as decision fatigue, and the constant, agonizing awareness of opportunity cost. When you can be anything, you are forever haunted by the ghosts of everything you chose not to be. If she chooses to focus intensely on her demanding career in her 20s and 30s, sacrificing her evenings and weekends to climb the ladder, she goes to sleep with a quiet, creeping anxiety that she is missing her biological window to build a family. If she chooses the opposite, if she stays home to raise her beautiful children, she scrolls through LinkedIn or Instagram and feels a deep, agonizing panic that she is losing her financial independence, erasing her professional identity, and falling hopelessly behind her peers. She is constantly, obsessively asking herself, did I make the right choice? Is this it? Is this all there is? Should I be doing more? Did I settle? This endless internal interrogation, this mental courtroom where she is always on trial, breeds a baseline level of chronic anxiety that colours absolutely everything she does. As a man, you might look at her life from the outside and think, you have a great job, a beautiful, safe home, and a guy who loves you and would die for you. Why aren't you happy? But you aren't seeing the parallel lives she is constantly comparing herself against in her own mind. She is not just living her current life. She is actively mourning the infinite other lives she had to leave behind, and she projects the frustration of that impossible situation onto the closest available target, you. This brings us directly to the second crushing weight, which is the complete and utter lie of having it all. Over the last few decades, a deeply toxic corporate brand of empowerment marketing sold women an impossible, mathematically flawed bill of goods. They were told that to be a successful, liberated, valuable modern woman, they needed to conquer every single domain of human existence simultaneously without breaking a sweat. Think about the standard she is holding herself to. She is expected to climb the corporate ladder with the ruthless, single-minded aggression of a 1980s Wall Street banker. She is expected to raise perfectly adjusted, organic-fed, highly stimulated, trauma-free children with the gentle, boundless patience of a saint. She is expected to maintain the physical appearance, body fat percentage, and wardrobe of a 25-year-old Instagram fitness model well into her 40s. She is expected to keep the romantic spark alive in her marriage, curate an aesthetically flawless home that looks like a magazine cover, and maintain an active, vibrant social life with her girlfriends. It is a completely psychotic set of expectations. It defies the basic laws of time, physical energy, and human biology. Yet, this is the exact invisible standard by which modern women judge themselves and each other every single day. They are running a marathon at a dead sprint pace, terrified of dropping even a single ball, because dropping a ball means they have failed at modern womanhood. And here is exactly where it affects you, the man. Because she is completely depleted, because her nervous system is constantly operating in a state of fight or flight, trying to keep this impossible juggling act in the air, she has absolutely zero bandwidth left for grace, for patience, or for peace. When you walk through the door after a long day and leave your shoes in the wrong place, or forget to pay a minor utility bill, her sudden, massive explosion of anger isn't actually about the shoes or the bill. It makes no logical sense for her to be that angry about shoes. What you are witnessing is the sound of a completely overwhelmed, red-lined nervous system snapping under the unbearable weight of an impossible societal lie. She feels like she's failing at everything, because the standard of success she has been sold is mathematically impossible to achieve. But the tragedy doesn't stop at the workplace or the mirror. We must deeply examine the absolute devastation of the modern community, or rather, the total lack of it. Human beings, and specifically human women, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to live in deeply connected, interdependent tribes. They evolved to gather food together, to cook together, and most importantly, to raise children collectively. There was always a grandmother, a sister, an aunt, an older cousin, or a neighbour around to hold the crying baby, to share the heavy daily chores, to sit around the fire and talk, to vent, and to share the massive psychological burden of existence. Fast forward to today. The modern village has been entirely, ruthlessly bulldozed by industrialization and modern urban planning. We have replaced the vibrant, loud, supportive tribe with the isolated, silent nuclear family. Women are now living in detached suburban fortresses or high-rise luxury apartments, completely and totally cut off from the daily continuous physical support of other women. A modern mother often spends 10 to 12 hours a day entirely alone with demanding young children, or entirely alone in a sterile corporate cubicle, commuting in a metal box, only to return to another quiet box. This deep, agonizing, structural isolation goes against every single biological instinct deeply wired into the female nervous system. It breeds a profound, aching loneliness that cannot possibly be cured by a glass of expensive wine, a spa day, or a Netflix binge. And because the village is dead, because the tribe is gone, who do you think she looks to in order to fill that massive, gaping void in her life? You, the husband, the boyfriend, the partner. The modern man has been quietly tasked with an absolutely impossible job description that no man in history has ever had to fulfill. You are now expected to be her sole financial partner, her dedicated co-parent, her absolute best friend, her primary emotional sounding board, her unqualified therapist, her spiritual guide, and her passionate, unpredictable lover. You are supposed to provide the emotional safety net, the daily gossip, the validation, and the support that an entire village of 30 women used to provide for her. And when you inevitably fall short, because no single human being, no matter how strong or loving, can be an entire village for another person, She feels empty. She looks at you. She feels a deep, gnawing sense of lack in her soul, and her modern programming tells her to assume that you are failing her. She assumes you aren't doing enough, that you aren't emotionally available enough, or that she simply chose the wrong man. She doesn't realize that she isn't actually craving a better husband. She is craving a lost community. She is deeply grieving the death of the village, but you are the only person standing in front of her to take the blame. Now, let's pour absolute rocket fuel on all of these vulnerabilities and talk about the digital reality. We cannot even begin to discuss modern female unhappiness without deeply dissecting the psychological warfare of social media. The human brain, evolved to care about the opinions of a 150-person tribe, was never designed to process the curated, weaponized highlights of 8 billion other people. For a woman whose brain is biologically highly attuned to social dynamics, status hierarchy, and social connection, platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest are incredibly destructive engines of misery. Every single time she opens her phone, which is dozens of times a day, she is visually assaulted by a highly manufactured, heavily filtered, algorithmically optimized version of reality designed to make her feel inadequate. She sees the 22-year-old influencer with literally flawless, poreless skin vacationing on a super yacht in Monaco. She swipes and sees the impossibly organized mother of 3 with a spotless, minimalist beige kitchen baking artisanal sourdough bread from scratch. She swipes again and sees the high-powered career woman celebrating her massive promotion with a new designer wardrobe and a luxury car. Her primitive brain does not logically comprehend that these are disparate, hyper-curated, often fake fragments from millions of different lives. Her subconscious brain merges all of these different women into one singular, terrifying, impossible standard of the normal modern woman. And against that Frankenstein monster of digital perfection, her real, messy, tired, completely normal life feels incredibly, painfully inadequate. This digital environment actively weaponizes female insecurity. It turns absolutely everything into a high-stakes status competition. Her home is no longer just a safe, warm place to live and rest. It is a reflection of her aesthetic value that must be ready to be photographed. Her body is not just a vessel for experiencing life. It is an endless project to be constantly optimized, starved, injected, and displayed for validation. Her romantic relationship is not just a private, sacred bond between 2 flawed humans. It is content that needs to look exactly as romantic, spontaneous, and wealthy as the couples she sees on her feed. This creates a permanent state of perpetual yearning. The goalpost for her happiness is strapped to the back of a speeding train, forever moving just out of her reach. If you save up and take her on a beautiful, romantic vacation to a cabin in the mountains, she enjoys it for exactly 1 day. But then she opens her phone, sees a girl from her high school posting from a 5-star resort in the Maldives, and suddenly the beautiful mountain cabin feels cheap, inadequate, and embarrassing. The insidious nature of this algorithmic comparison means that genuine gratitude becomes almost neurologically impossible for her. She is not unhappy with what she actually has. She is actively tortured by the glittering illusion of what everyone else seems to have. Furthermore, if we want to dig even deeper, we have to look at the profound, unnatural shift in male and female dynamics, particularly regarding biological energy and survival in the modern economy. To survive, compete, and thrive in the modern cutthroat corporate world, women have had to adopt a highly masculine energetic state. I don't mean they are dressing like men or acting like men in a literal sense. I mean they are forced to operate from a place of intense logic, relentless competition, rigid boundary setting, aggressive problem solving, and emotional detachment. They have to put on heavy psychological armor every single morning just to go to war in the boardroom or the marketplace and be taken seriously. But biological energy is not something you can just switch on and off like a light bulb when you walk through the front door. When she comes home at 6 p.m, she is still fully armored up. Her nervous system is still heavily flooded with cortisol and adrenaline from the workday. She is still in combat mode, still evaluating threats, still trying to optimize and manage. The beautiful magnetic core of feminine energy, which is receptive, flowing, nurturing, trusting, and surrendered, is buried beneath 10 feet of corporate survival tactics. This creates a tragic, relationship-destroying dynamic in the home. Deep down, underneath the exhaustion, she desperately wants to soften. She desperately wants to take the heavy armor off, to fall deeply into her feminine nature, to feel safe and to let you lead the relationship. But she has been so deeply conditioned by her environment to control everything. She has been told so many times that relying on a man is dangerous, and she is so terrified of dropping the ball that she literally cannot let go. Her nervous system won't allow it, so she ends up aggressively micromanaging the house. She criticizes exactly how you load the dishwasher. She dictates how you should drive. She treats the romantic relationship like it's just another stressful corporate project that needs to be optimized and managed. And the tragic irony is that she deeply resents the fact that she feels she has to be the one in control, but she is too terrified and wired to relinquish that control to you. This specific dynamic absolutely kills polarity. It kills sexual intimacy. It turns passionate, wildly attracted lovers into exhausted, resentful roommates bickering over chore charts and grocery lists. She is deeply angry because she feels she has to be the masculine force in her own life, and she projects that bitter anger entirely onto you, viewing you as inadequate, weak or passive, even if you are doing everything logically right. And this leads us to the final and perhaps most toxic element: the modern cultural messaging that aggressively, relentlessly validates her dissatisfaction. We live in a society that currently coddles and celebrates female complaints, while simultaneously demanding total male stoicism and endless apology. If a modern woman is unhappy in her relationship, a vast, multi-billion-dollar cultural apparatus of podcasts, magazines, influencers, and pop psychology immediately surrounds her to tell her that her feelings are absolute facts, that her boundaries are sacred, and that any discomfort, boredom, or unhappiness she feels is definitively 100% the fault of the patriarchy, or more specifically, the fault of her partner. She is actively encouraged to view romantic relationships through a hyper-transactional, deeply narcissistic lens. The modern advice is always, what is he bringing to the table? Is he serving your highest good? Is he matching your energy? If he doesn't treat you like a literal goddess 24/7, drop him. There is absolutely zero modern discourse encouraging women to look inward, to practice humility, to embrace self-sacrifice, or to accept the normal, boring, difficult, unsexy seasons of a long-term partnership. The prevailing narrative is incredibly destructive. If it's hard, it's wrong. If you aren't completely, euphorically fulfilled every single second, he is toxic and he is failing you. This constant, deafening external validation of her victimhood creates a psychological trap that she cannot escape. It completely robs her of her own agency and power. Think about it. If her unhappiness is always your fault, or society's fault, or her boss's fault, then she never has to do the grueling, uncomfortable, terrifying work of facing her own demons, managing her own wild expectations, healing her own traumas, or taking personal responsibility for generating her own joy. She remains a permanent, righteous victim, and you remain the permanent perpetrator. So, where does this leave you? Where does this leave the good, hard-working, well-intentioned man standing directly in the crossfire of all these massive historical, societal, and psychological forces? First and foremost, you have to completely, radically reframe how you internalize her emotional weather and her unhappiness. When she is highly stressed, anxious, constantly complaining, or radiating a dark cloud of dissatisfaction, your deep biological instinct as a man is to fix it. You are a problem solver. You want to slay the dragon. And when your logical, step-by-step solutions don't work, when you tell her to just get off Instagram because it makes her sad, or to quit the job that makes her miserable, or when you bend over backwards to help out more around the house, and she still finds a reason to complain, you feel like an absolute failure. You feel deeply disrespected, unappreciated, and hopelessly inadequate. You must stop internalizing her emotional chaos. You have to realize that her anxiety about having it all is not a reflection of your ability to provide for her. Her bone-deep exhaustion from the lack of a modern village is not a sign that you are a bad, unsupportive partner. Her comparison-induced depression from scrolling social media is not happening because your life together isn't beautiful and worthy. She is fighting a brutal, unwinnable war against an invisible, impossible societal standard, and you just happen to be the closest civilian standing in the blast radius. Understanding this reality deeply allows you to do something incredibly powerful. It allows you to detach with love. It allows you to stop being deeply, personally wounded every single time she sighs heavily, rolls her eyes, or complains about the state of the living room. You can look at her with genuine masculine compassion, recognizing the immense, unfair pressure she is operating under, without taking on the impossible responsibility of fixing her soul. You cannot fix the paradox of infinite choice for her. You cannot build a supportive tribe of 30 women out of thin air. You cannot delete the highly addictive algorithms that are actively hacking her brain chemistry. And you absolutely, fundamentally cannot make a woman happy who is entirely disconnected from the concept of gratitude. What you can do, and what you must do, is stand your ground. Be the solid, unmovable, deeply rooted mountain in the absolute center of her emotional hurricane. Do not get pulled into the chaos. Do not let her anxiety dictate the reality of your household. Do not engage in petty, exhausting arguments when she is clearly acting out of stress and exhaustion rather than logic. Provide a safe, grounded, incredibly strong masculine presence that allows her to feel secure enough to maybe, just maybe, take off her heavy corporate armor when she is alone with you. Hold her to a standard of respect, absolutely. Detaching with love does not mean becoming a doormat. You do not have to, and should not, tolerate verbal abuse, blatant disrespect, or constant, toxic complaining that poisons your home. Set your boundaries firmly and enforce them calmly, but do so with the deep, quiet understanding that her struggle is very often a symptom of a much larger, modern disease, not a reflection of your worth. The absolute truth that men don't hear, the truth that is completely drowned out by the toxic noise of modern dating advice and gender wars, is that female unhappiness today is largely a systemic psychological trap. It is a profound spiritual crisis brought on by a modern world that gave women absolutely everything they ever asked for, without ever warning them about the heavy, crushing, soul-destroying price tag attached to it. Your job as a man is not to pay that price for her. You couldn't even if you tried. Your job is to build a strong, honourable, purpose-driven life. Your job is to lead your relationship with unshakable integrity, to protect your own mental peace, and to offer her a beautiful, safe space to exist. Whether she chooses to do the internal work required to step into that peace, or whether she chooses to stay outside in the storm, wrestling with the impossible demands of the modern world and her own ego, is ultimately, completely, and entirely up to her. Let go of the hero fantasy. Let go of the need to save her from her own era, and focus all of that energy on being a man who is so deeply unshakable in his own purpose that her emotional storms can wash over you without ever moving you an inch. That is where your freedom lies.